need a little help, I reckon. And if you are, you're in the right place here today. Over the last year and a half, we've been having a conversation here at Renman Music and Business about today's music business, and we're having it with some of the smartest, most talented, most successful people in the whole music business. And for all you people in the audience today and all the people watching online, you're invited to be part of the conversation as well. Today, we got a special Renman Live. We're on the road again. We came to Nashville, Tennessee, the home of country music. We're here at the Polestar 2014 Live Conference, which, if you're not familiar with Polestar, it is like the Bible of the concert business. It's where everybody goes to see what's happening, to check scorecards, to see who's doing business and who's not. And so it's a pleasure being here. I've had a chance to speak here a number of times in the past. Today it's fun to do our web show from here. So I want to take a moment to thank all the folks at Polestar, Gary Bongiovanni, Gary Smith, who I've known for years. I want to thank Ivan Luck, Steve McFadden, Debbie Spear, and Sherry, and all the folks for making us feel right at home here in Nashville here today. For some of you folks that don't know about Renman Music and Business that have been seeing these mysterious Renman Music Project posters around, let me tell you what we've been up to. When I started in the music business 36 years ago, I started as a concert promoter like lots of the folks here today. And I was very lucky and fortunate early in my career that I had met some mentors. Two gentlemen, one by the name of Brian Murphy, who's with AEG, was one of my mentors, and a gentleman by the name of Bob Geddes. And those two guys had a huge impact on my mentality and my success in the business. Both of them very different characters. Brian, you know, kind of the Ozzie Nelson of rock. Bob Geddes, more of the Clint Eastwood, I'll break your face mode. And both of those guys had, you know, shaped my mentality in a big way. And so much so that when, even back then, when I thought if I ever had the chance to do for those guys, for somebody else what those guys did for me in terms of helping people out, that I would do it. So I decided to start this website, and we started with 24 videos. 12 of the videos were on the thoughts about how to get your head in the right place to do something great, and another 12 that had dealt with the nuts and bolts of the business, what everybody's supposed to be doing, how they help you, and how you can make it work for you. Somewhere along the line, we decided to start this web show called Renman Live because I thought it'd be a good idea to take the conversation a little bit wider. So I asked one friend of mine in the business to come on the show, and lo and behold, they did, and then another and another. And now we've done about 90 shows with some of the smartest, most talented people in the business, and I want to thank them all for being a part of it. Speaking of being a part of it, we got a saying around the Ren Management office that goes something like this: if you don't ask, you don't get, and you don't learn anything. So I'm encouraging everybody, including the folks here in the office, to ask questions. Now, we'll come back to you guys at the end. For the folks in the audience, we'll talk to you at the end here. But if you're watching online today, here's how you can get involved. Now, if you're one of these advanced planner types, you can go to our event page at Renman Music and Business, and you can post your questions in advance, and lots of folks have done that, and we'll be asking some of those questions during the show today. If you just tuned in and you're not an advanced player, you can go to the chat room. My friend Mr. Cody Romness over there will be presiding over the chat room, taking your questions. You can also call us on our Renman hotline, although I'll tell you today we decided because of some technical issues, we've actually made a call so we have somebody waiting. So today you won't be able to do that. The only thing we ask from you is that you sign up to be a member on our site. It's free. It lets you have an opportunity to actually ask questions and be a part of the conversation. Okay, now, I want to introduce my guest today, Mr. Paul Tollett. Paul is one of the top promoters in the business. He's now the CEO of Goldenvoice, but I think he's best known now as being the founder and visionary of the Coachella Music Festival. I recall meeting Paul probably 30 plus years ago, sitting in a settlement room at the Hollywood Palladium of a band called Dramarama that I managed at the time. I remember that he kind of looked like he was about 15 years old. He had this baseball cap on, but I could sense his passion for the business even back then. I've been chasing Paul now to do this web show for the better part of a year, almost to the point of being a stalker. And I was down in Mexico this past winter with my friends in Incubus, and I got an email late at night saying I'm ready to do my date at the Renman Live show, and I was stoked. I made my whole day. Today, I got another note from Paul Tollett, which you folks can't see, so I'll ask Cody over there to read it for you. Code?
Yeah, well, let's see. The email starts from Paul Tollett, and it's to Steve Rennie. Subject is Polestar, and it reads, guys, I had to go back to LA, had a bad cough. Paul Tollett.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I didn't say much when I read that or when it was read to me, but I do know what I was thinking. It was, are you fucking kidding me? And but I'm happy to say that he was just fooling around. I never knew he was quite the kidder, but he is. So I want to welcome today my friend and promoter friend, guest, Mr. Paul Tollett. Thanks for joining us here today. All right. Usually when I do our show, if you've ever watched, I have a little desk at my office so I can put all my stuff on so you don't know I'm reading. So I'm going to cheat a little bit today, so I wrote down the questions here. We've had all kinds of people on the show, and one of the toughest things to do about this music business is to get started. And I think for lots of people that are dreaming about doing something big, they have a tough time when figuring out and working through how am I going to get started. So what we'd like to do is ask all our guests the same old question, is how you got started in the hopes that it might inspire some of the folks that are out there dreaming about. So Paul, let me ask you, how'd you get started in this wacky music business?
It wasn't really like deciding to start, it just you like music, and I had a lot of friends that were in bands. My brother started a band out in the suburbs of Los Angeles. Near Pomona, and we used to go to clubs, and sometimes you'd play clubs, and you know the clubs always treat you bad when you're a small band. And we decided one day, I was in high school, you know, just put our own show together. So we found a restaurant and found a ska band, a punk band, a mod band, just put them all together, and it was fun. Like I think maybe 110 paid or something, and it was beautiful. And I've had a show on sale ever since. It was just that magical of a moment. You know, it was great. The guy who owned the restaurant brought me, I was 17, brought me into his office, locked the door. He had the till, and like intimidating me until, you know, I could get the money from him. And I got most of it. And just learned a lot. It was just super fun. And I remember that era. I was only doing clubs and going to clubs. I wasn't even thinking of rock concerts. Just thinking about 100 and 200 seat pizza places and whatnot. And I had heard your name on the radio ads out in Riverside. You know, Rennie presents Steve Rennie, Rain Cross Square, and you know all these like maybe Police and Oingo Boingo. Or,
we had Oingo Boingo. I wish I had the Police. We actually had the Police show up, but it wasn't the band.
Yeah, but it was that era of, you know, early
Adam Ant,
new wave. Yeah. And, so I was like, oh, that's a fun job, you know. And I read about Brian Murphy, who's running Avalon Attractions in the newspaper. So I was always reading the newspaper, LA Times, every day in the listings. Every Sunday to come out, I'd read every single word of every band. Like, oh, why is that band playing there? Like, just me and my brother would, you know, discuss it and debate. You know, if we had a band, where it'd be playing, you know, stuff like this. And always like kind of music theory, you know, music business theory, I guess. And we always hated the music business, but we just loved like breaking bands. You know, it was like kind of fun. And promoting some shows, and next thing you know, Gary Tovar, who owned Goldenvoice, decided he's going to do some shows in the Pomona area, and you know, we panicked like, whoa, we got to get this, you know, mob of people out of here, you know, like we
mob people,
gotta, you know, gotta bat them back, you know. So go down to a show in Long Beach, Fender's Ballroom. I think it was Bad Manners, Fishbone, or I forget what it was, you know, Chili Peppers, one of those, and actually, you know, tell them, you know, if you come here, you really don't know what you're doing. We got this on lock, you know, and totally silly. But turns out he was just super cool. And just talked to him all night. We never left the box office, and I don't smoke pot, so it was like really hard to stay in that puff,
without catching a little buzz,
thing. And you know, talked all night just about, you know, futures of different areas, and he always loved the geography of Southern California. You know, he'd name cities in a row, and we were like, no, Gardena's first. You know, it was like really fun. And so, end of the night, he gives me a box of flyers, and says, you know, go hit the other valley. He called it, you know, and I was like just super excited. Like I'm working for Goldenvoice. Like he didn't say it, but if I got a box, I'm working. And just rode that to. You know, for a long time, and that was in '86, January, February '86, and then so I was Gary one day, a month into it, I go down to his house and he says, "Can you? I need help. I need someone to run my company." like 30 days into it.
And you're 18 years old now, 19 years old?
Yeah, and probably 19 at that point, 20, I don't know. And 48 now, so whatever that is. So he lets me hang out at his house for a while, and we just, kind of run things that way. Then we get an office, and I'm super excited. I get to run an office with Gary, and he never comes in. He just wants to go to the shows, and he's doing work, from his phone, and he's, selling some weed and whatnot, and so keep that quiet. So it was kind of fun, it was like really fun, and I was just kind of a chauffeur to the shows, and to this day, I kind of remember every word he said, and I remember when I got there, putting the files and everything together, all the boxes come in, I memorized all the old shows. So the first 4 years at Goldenvoice, I went back. I remember all the shows just when they were playing, I went to a bunch of them. But I kind of, looked through the budgets and trying to learn, okay, that's how, wow, $5,000 for a punk band? just like, you learn all these things, and just tried to understand. And then Rick Van Satten was working in LA doing small shows, and he was starting to do publicity for Goldenvoice, and got to know him, and then we got to be really good friends. Now there was like 2 of us working. Gary had a whole crew already working shows, but they weren't in the office. But they were running the Brian Meckelberg and Ann Meckelberg, the whole.
Jim Garno was running with that gang at some point.
Yeah, Jim Garno was before me. In fact, they had tried an office maybe 2 years before us. And Jim and a couple guys, and he was down in Irvine, and they, got a Signal Hill office, and so I'd run into him, picking up flyers before that, and you've seen your name, all these guys, Brian Murphy. To me, you guys are kind of just untouchable because you're like doing the real bands in the music business. We were kind of doing the off-Broadway, if you want to call it, and it was great, and so me and Rick really getting along, and then in '91, Gary gets arrested,
Wasn't a traffic ticket, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was, so what happened is we had to decide, do we go over to Avalon Attractions, or do we just keep going? Can't really use the Goldenvoice name, like we were just confused what to do. So we just started doing shows on our own for a little bit. Called Brian Murphy to Avalon and said, we may be coming over there, save us a spot, with the tail between our legs. And he's like, cool. He was super cool through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And, we took over. About maybe 6 months later, we decided, let's just go use the name Goldenvoice. We went to Gary, paid a bunch of money for it, and paid a bunch of debt, and he had obviously some legal troubles. And, that was kind of...
It's funny, I remember when we first started, Paul was like the friendly face, and Gary was this great character, right? And I remember Avalon Attraction had an exclusive at the Palladium. And I'll never forget the first show we co-promoted with Goldenvoice, because Garino, I think, was the guy that played Peacemaker, and said, you should talk to these guys. And I think once we started talking, it was a little bit less about they're the big bad guys, and a little bit, okay, we'll do this place here. And the first show we did was Black Flag. I'll never forget at the Hollywood Palladium, because that was my idea. We'll do these shows with Goldenvoice. First one, Black Flag, and I remember Brian Murphy going, Black Flag, man, I don't know if that's a fucking great idea or not. So anyway, long story short, as you recall, we had a police, it wasn't the band, it was the LAPD, we had helicopters, we had a freaking melee there, and some kid got up on the roof and took one of those hard plastic containers that you put glasses in to shove them through the dishwasher, and he threw it down and hit the security guard on top of the head, and the guy comes in the production office bleeding. He goes, who fucking booked this show? And that's right about the time I took off down the hallway there. So it was an auspicious start, but you guys were on to something really early on, that you were making money off of bands that nobody would touch.
Low tickets, back then it was low tickets, low overhead, and everything was just low budget. I mean, Gary Tovar, just kind of perfected that. Yeah. And it was great to just hang out with them during that era. And Jim Garino had worked for Goldenvoice for a while, really early on, and then switched to Avalon, which was like that was the kind of the real company in town that had all the arenas and owned an amphitheater and all these things. And we didn't have any assets.
No.
We got our first really exclusive maybe in '88. John Anson Ford was kind of the first real piece of real estate you know, that we took serious and drilled shows into. And like ever since then, it was like, you know, kind of commercial.
I want to pick up on that. You mentioned Gary Tovar. We had a question from one of our mentors, or one of our members about mentoring. Cody, you got that question?
Yeah. This one comes from our member, Ketsia. She says, hey, Paul, as a fellow science major with a passion for music and live shows, she wanted to know, firstly, now that you look back at your career, would you have switched your major to the music department, or are you still glad that you earned your degree in chemical engineering?
You were a chemical engineering major?
Yeah. I didn't graduate, so let me see that.
Well, neither did I.
when I
ironic that you wound up with Gary Tovar.
Chemistry, yeah. So what happened was when we signed the Hollywood Palladium exclusive, I was a senior at Cal Poly Pomona, chemical engineering, and I felt like, okay, I'm going to go that route. You know, enough of this. I didn't really like the chemical engineering that much. You know, I didn't look good in a pocket protector anyway. So what we did was just we got that exclusive and started drilling shows into there, and we were doing 30 shows. It was kind of the time when alternative blew up, you know, a little bit before grunge, but all the punk rock, and every band was playing 2 nights sold out. It was just such a great time. And to answer that question, I would think that any major is fine, as long as you just power through and learn how to study, learn how to stay up all night and cram, and just, I don't know if any major is it. Music's fine too. Like that's, you know, looking back, sure, that would have maybe, I would have learned a few more things. You know, they have these music business departments that, you know, Cal Poly Pomona has one, you know, USC and all these different ones, and there's some across America. It's like, yeah, if you can get information, you know, before, but there's a lot of places to get information too, and just doing it. Another.
Well, that's one of my favorite ways, is just doing it, because everything I've learned, for better or worse, I learned by doing the hard way. I remember when we first settled the show, and we were talking about, I was learning the punk business about flat guarantees, and Avalon was always getting stuck up for big percentages, and I kind of envy you guys when you paid a band a flat guarantee, and I was thinking, well, how do they do that? I could never figured that one out.
I remember I did a show with Steve. He was managing Dramarama, and it was the first time I saw this happen. We had the band on a percentage, so like if you hit 3,500 tickets, there's a really big bonus. So we sold 3,410. I'm like, awesome. You like sold almost everything, but no huge bonus, you know? So I'm walking around super happy. He buys 90 tickets.
I wasn't good at science, but I was good at math.
Yeah.
And
I'm like, I'm not sure about this one. I gotta.
I'll bet you never went there again, though. I closed the box office before some manager gets a smart idea here.
Little tricks you learn, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about the music. That's why we started this website, because I think that the best way to learn is by doing. And if you can't be actually in the room with people, the internet has provided you this wonderful opportunity now to be where location becomes a non-issue, and people that are watching out there around the world today can actually get a chance to feel like they're on the couch here with us, so to speak. You had one more question over there, Code?
Yeah, I did have another one. This one comes from Absent Dream, and he was asking, what inspired you to start Coachella, and what are some of the unexpected challenges that you overcame along the way?
Maybe an inspiration of starting that show a couple different ways. Business-wise, it was, we just had no assets. We couldn't own an amphitheater, an arena, we had nothing going. On that, we had a lot of relationships and had our wits or whatever, but on that level, it was just, there's a field everywhere, just find it and put some creativity into it, right? On the coolness level, it's like, went to Glastonbury, so that was eye-opening when I saw that, like no finer event to this day, and but just through the years, you go back when I was a kid, hearing about Monterey Pop. California has always had incredible festivals. Monterey Pop Festival, maybe the first rock one out there, Us Festival, Cal Jams in the 70s. Like, these were just, probably the seeds to what we were doing. And then Lollapalooza came in '91 in the amphitheaters. So that was cool. I remember, we were just talking about this, that we have 150 bands on Coachella this year. And you announce the lineup, and there's people like, I don't know about the lineup. Every year we get this, right?
Sure.
And I remember when Lollapalooza was told to me by Geiger, and I'm calling my friends, they got everybody, 7 bands. Jane's Addiction, they got, I'm going down the list like slow.
All 7 of them.
Susie, and 7. And now 150 is like, eh. And it's just you can see how things have changed.
Well, I want to talk about how you get to those 150 a little bit later here. But carry on.
Completely random.
Throw darts here.
So I think that, that was, those festivals were everything. Obviously, Gary Tovar, early Goldenvoice, stacking the bill. That was a really good. That was a really good thing. There was I worked for 2 promoters even before that. Worked with Pat Bassich and Joe Schultz. I don't know if you remember these guys.
Joe Schultz with a club somewhere.
Yeah,
there,
Joe
right?
Kelly. These guys, and like they had these things. Make sure it's a must see. If you're doing a big event that you got a lot of risk on, make sure the lineup is a must see. And it sounds like easy advice, but to this day I look at like, do you have to go to this, or can you look at the lineup and go, yeah, I can, skip this. Isn't that compelling? So that sort of drive keeps these big festivals, not just mine, but
I want to ask you something else here. It's funny, people look back, now at Coachella, and there's always a tendency to look at where somebody is and think that's where they started, right? One of the things I've learned over the years is that there's all kinds of obstacles and all kinds of things that sink your plan, no matter how much, time and energy you put into it. And for me, working through those obstacles, particularly in the music business, my mantra was always, fuck the gatekeepers. There was always somebody telling me this can't happen, or you can't do that, or you're crazy to do this, right? So for me, that was my battle cry, this fuck the gatekeepers. As difficult as it is for people to imagine that Coachella wasn't always a winner, in those early days, it almost sunk the ship. And my question is those early days when it was all in doubt, was that a kind of a fuck the gatekeeper moment for you when you did that first Coachella and you had this vision, this whole idea and this plan, and then the reality of it struck?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it was as much that as we just wanted to do something different. Like we weren't even that mad at that point at the music industry. We're just kind of beaten down. SFX had bought everybody around us. I had met Sillerman once, and we had nothing they wanted, and it was just a useless conversation, And so all along, Goldenvoice was always just cool shows to us, and really wasn't thinking business necessarily. Like there's business to it, but it was just that, and it's almost like you're just trying to impress your friends and your staff, and which is all this one and the same, and you keep going. So when we lost the first year, which was super awful, we didn't lose any staff. Like we all loved it. Like we're like,
but you had to give some of these people IOUs, right?
There were some IOUs, and there were some checks that necessarily didn't go through the first week, and it was, they all like hung in there. No one really complained on that level, and they're still with us, and it's like they're super incredible. With all these festivals, I'm sure the other ones are like ours. It's seriously about that team, that personality of that team. And you get these groups of people, Goldenvoice, and as it grows for Coachella, in the coming months, it's like there's this personality to in the whole with all of us. It's like super fun to be around. It's a nice energy. Yeah,
that's a great lead-in. We got one of our Renman Music and Business members. We've got about 7,000 people that are part of our little community there. We have one on the phone with us today who is she's on fire. Her name is Kara O'Neill. Do we have her on the phone over there, Cody?
Hey, Kara, can you hear me right now? Give us 1 sec. We're going to pop her on. Hey, Kara, you there?
All right. We got to turn her up. I hear her barely.
Oh, yeah, here she is. We'll turn her up. Sorry about that, Kara.
Kara, you there?
I'm here. All right.
There she is. Kara O'Neill, you're on with Paul Tollett. Ask him your question. First, tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, Paul. My name is Kara O'Neill, and I'm an artist manager from Miami. And Steve talks a lot about, the importance of picking your business partners in this business. So I'm curious how you went about picking your business partners for Coachella.
Okay, so in the beginning it was just Rick and I. That was the partnership because we're great friends. So that's how I picked that one. But the second one was after we lost money, we just gave up on Coachella. We just thought it was over. And John Meglin from Concerts West at that time, him and Paul Gongaware meet us and say, hey, we are starting this concert company with the Staples Center. Didn't even have a name, I don't think. AEG, at the AEG Live or whatever, and said, we want Goldenvoice to help us find shows. and we'd like you to do Coachella again. And we're like, are you sure? Like, we got some inside information on that one. You might not want to.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we're sure, because first year's gonna lose. Like, you just gotta stick with it. We're like, wow, that's crazy, like crazy talk. And
it must have been felt kind of liberating to actually think that there's somebody that be crazier than you.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I was instantly thinking what art pieces I was gonna do, you know. So I'm like, wow, that's great. So and Rick, you know, he heard that they owned the Kings and didn't care what the price was. He's in, you know. Can he get tickets? He's good. And we ended up, because I had done shows with Megalyn before, David Bowie and Nine Inch Nails years ago, and so I'm like, yeah, these guys seem comfortable. Then we ended up meeting Tim and, you know, the Wiki and all of them, and Irving Azoff was in the mix too, because he's actually the one who did some bridge, what they call it, bridge financing or whatever, you know, for Coachella between first year and second year.
Really?
And but number one, hands down, Mark Geiger, right after Coachella, when he was at, you know, Artist Direct, he came to us and said, you guys are pretty much dead. You know, I'm gonna help you. We're gonna sponsor Goldenvoice for years. If you could do Coachella again, we'll get you some money. And he wound up, you know, we all went together, Mark Geiger, Don Muller, John Silva, a few of them got together. Even Jim Garino, who didn't have a band on the bill, called and said, I'll do a benefit for you. What do you need?
Yeah.
Like, there was really, when we lost all that money and everyone knew Goldenvoice was going to be out of business, a lot of the people we did business with, even the punk rock bands that weren't at Coachella in that time period, they wanted to help. And that was kind of exciting. Nice to see people helping like that.
It's a tribute to you, Tollett, because I think all the people in this room, we won't mention any names, there's lots of folks that if they'd have taken one on the chin, people would have been standing up, taking applause and buying tickets for the funeral. But it's a testimony to you in your connection with people, honest to God, you know.
Thanks. I think that you gotta, you know, make friends. If you're trying to, you know, come up in a business or whatever, you seriously cannot do it alone. Like, you can be smart, you can be rich, anything like that. There's nothing that, you know, I look at my staff, like hanging out with 20 or 30 of them, I feel like there's not much we can't do. That's because we're in sync together, you know, not land, space in sync, but in sync. Yeah. You know, and I think that we have to, you know, if you're building something, and if it's a band, if you're in a band, find 3 or 4 other bands, play a bunch of shows together, you know, go in the next city playing together as like you're representing your city. All these things, like, you get groups of people. If you're a manager, get 2 or 3 managers. Never look, and this, I will say this about Goldenvoice and Avalon Attractions. So go back, Avalon Attractions, you know, the classic era, I'm going to call it, was Brian Murphy, who owned, you know, was Bob Geddes was in the background, but he wasn't in the forefront. He's probably the biggest owner for all I know. Brian, you, Jim Garino, Moss Jacobs. And these were like stellar promoters. Every one of them had relationships, had this and that, right? I never looked at them as the enemy. They never looked at us as the enemy, even though we were kind of doing shows. And to this day, Nederlander in our market, not the enemy. You know, Live Nation, I feel I can call them if I had a problem and say, you know, can you take the show off our hands, or, you know, can I co-promote with you? Yeah. I think that's the key is, don't look at your competitors as the full enemy. Sure, like, don't share information with them, and, you know, you need to get ahead, but if you can stay friends with a lot of people that do what you do, you'll all kind of go up. It's
not everybody that subscribes to that mentality. It's interesting, I had a chance to talk to Rick Mueller yesterday, who I didn't realize the connection to Goldenvoice again. And he brought up that very point there, that for him, what was so striking about you is that you never, even when he was working at other companies, you would help him out. And when he was in between companies, you would help him out. And we talked about it. I said, you know, that's not the natural disposition of a lot of people in the business. But if you're out there and you're learning this business, I think it's important to understand that, you know, being decent, being, you know, a gentleman or you know, or not just a woman or a man or woman, you know, having some class and some dignity about you is important, and it never costs you anything. And there is a bit of a fraternity amongst promoters.
There's some markets that might be different, and it's always about specific personalities. There may be some markets like the other guy, the other woman is just not wanting to get along, and it's like, so, you know, you got to adapt to that. But I think that we've had great luck with it, and not just promoters bigger than us. You know, promoters on our same size, smaller promoters. You know, like we get along with Insomniac of, you know, for years, you know, we've existed and kind of have not stepped on each other, and it's hard because like we want to do big stuff, they want to do big stuff. A lot of the same, you know, artists, and it's like you got to have somewhat of respect that they're doing their thing, you're doing their thing. You know, don't. But there's even smaller promoters that you see them coming up. It's like you don't want to just step on them. It's like you were there. You know, you gotta feed them some shows once in a while. It's like, it sounds weird, but like we're feeding some local promoters shows from Coachella. It's like, because I get it, like we were there, you know, we need some morsels, you know.
Well, it's great that you actually remember, you know, and for all you folks out there that are watching or in the web that are just starting off in the business, he said the same thing that everybody said. If you're looking to do something big, it's bigger than one person, and you're going to need a team, and treating them right and having some respect for people is important. You can compete, but you don't have to be a dick about it. So I want to talk about okay, my wife will be so, gosh, you were doing so well, Steve.
Nice input, Rennie.
You know, in the real estate business, they talk about this notion of location, 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 right? I remember the first year you put on Coachella, and it was out in Palm Springs area, right? And I thought, wow, geez, that's kooky. Who's going to drive out to freaking Palm Springs? But you obviously had a different take on it. Talk about, you know, that the site and the location and how important that's been in your eyes to the success of Coachella.
So in '93, we had done Pearl Jam at that Polo Club. It didn't look like it did today because Pearl Jam didn't want to do arenas in town. They really weren't big fans of Los Angeles at the time, of all the industry and everything. They're fighting with Ticketmaster. So they gave us a shot at, we said, can we do a show out near Palm Springs? And we scoured, found a field, a half hour past Palm Springs. And so when we got it in our mind to do a big festival, like, let's go take a look at that place again. You know, it was kind of cool. And when we got out there, it had completely changed. The owner, Alex Hagan, had, you know, it looks like, you know, the Queen of England's polo field. It's just beautiful. Like when we saw it, oh wow, this is positively the place now. And so it took us a year or two to, you know, make it happen. We had some false starts to get the bands together. You know, it was a little hard, but it finally. 99.
Was it tougher getting the bands or getting the location? You know, that there's a lot of older folks out in the neighborhood, and the thought of a big rock show coming to town, I imagine, didn't warm their hearts initially.
At that time, there wasn't so many neighbors around that field. But there was, the city was concerned, and ironically, we launched that show. We announced, and right as we announced, the Woodstock '99 riots happened that weekend. So CNN was all about fires and all the struggles, and it was like really bad timing for us. And we think that had a lot to do with the bad sales too. Because the word festival, it's hard to imagine now because it's so, you know, so popular with the festivals in general. Festivals were not cool in '99. They were cool when Lollapalooza started in '91. It was like revolutionary, the touring thing, and there was a couple-year period, '97, '98, '99. Everyone just gave up on festivals. On the touring festival, it was just kind of like a pathetic. It fell apart for whatever reason. You just markets do that, and it could happen again. So like we all have to be careful. It's not going to last forever if we don't, you know.
You got to take care of it.
Got to take care of it, and so you know, we talk about location. I don't think that. I think when you're in the walls, what does it look like? Because it could be Indio. You know, it turns out now that's a really great thing because it has the mountains, has the resorts out there. There's a lot of things that we didn't even understand
that are unique to that.
That were unique to that event. It just, you know, we chose it and it just kind of happened. But you could throw a dart across the map, and if there was a really beautiful site, you know, this one in Michigan, Rothbury site, you know, where Electric Forest, like they have a tree forest happening. It's in the 5th most important city in Michigan, the only state in the nation losing population, and it's 20 minutes outside that city, and it's still a great site.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be New York City. It doesn't have to be, if it's super, you know, build it, they will come type of thing. It's like if it's great, people will drive.
Yeah, I think though, last year was the first year I'd actually been to Coachella. I kept holding out for Incubus, and then I finally gave up on that idea. And I was struck by it was perfect. I just sat there and thought, geez, if you were going to put on a festival here, this is the greatest place I've ever seen. It was big, there was access, it was far enough away from the neighbors, so there wasn't like in their backyards. And I was blown away by how good the site was, and I was especially blown away by how much the execution of how it all worked in there. My son has been a number of times, and he says that's gotten better over the years. Talk about how you put on a show in such a big place. It's like you got a little city going on there.
Well, it's a cliche, but it's your staff. It's like you have to make sure that you empower them. And when I say empower them, don't get in their way. That's more than empowering. Like, I don't think I've ever empowered anybody. I just don't stop them from doing something. And Skip Page and Bill Fold and who they're running things. It's like they got to be able to do what they need to do, and they think about that show morning, noon, and night. I always laugh. Like Skip probably introduces me as the guy who books the show, for all I know. And it's like that's good. It's like I want him to feel it's his show. Like he's making decisions. It's like he understands every single detail of that show, and you have to have that in all the departments. I see it, all the staff they're working with. The guy who runs the parking and the traffic. It's like he's running it. It's like he's not afraid to make a move. And almost every single person in the chain that we have never did that job, that type of job at another place. Go back to the traffic guy. Like he never did traffic. Traffic was awful. He was a post-hardcore music fan, and like, he wanted a place at Coachella, so it's like he learned what to do. Over the years on that show, we've figured out we don't want traffic, of course, so a third of the people are camping. We got basically 100,000 people there. Third camp, so their cars are off the streets. A third take the bus shuttles, so that's really alleviating the whole car situation. Then the other third are in cars. But even that third, we've attacked with a situation where we give away every day 4 free tickets to Coachella lifetime passes if you go 4 to a car. And seriously, every single car is 4 to a car.
Yeah.
And when they win, they almost get a heart attack. Like we have to.
That's how I felt this morning when I got that email. Maybe you could just send me 4 passes, Hey,
Renman, I actually have 2 good questions from the chat room right along these lines. This one comes in from Louis. Awesome. Louis says, this is regarding being at a festival with so much going on and trying to grab people's attention. He asks, what have been the strategies that you've seen for bands and artists best implemented to gather great response before and during and after their sets?
Okay, say it again.
So I'll give it, shorten it up here. What are good strategies for bands?
Yeah. So I think, it automatically has kind of taken root already. People are instantly putting on their Facebook and Twitter if it was an epic set or if it went flat. And, a band should have a Twitter site, have all those things. And be surprised some of the people who don't upkeep, what they got. Now, there's a few bands who don't want anything. Bless them. Like, that's awesome. If that's their thing, that's great. The ones that are wrong are they don't have a stance, they just don't have one. That's probably not right. But I think that having your whole social strategy in current time is best. And the bands should do it themselves too. If they're into this sort of thing, instantly get the photos out there and get the links and get this and that, and
I think it's one of the big givebacks of the music business. As a manager for years, at first I kind of looked at the whole social media thing, thinking, this is kind of like little girls BFF stuff, and then I think when the Arab Spring happened and Twitter helped, direct rockets in, I thought, hold it, this is a whole different thing. And I think today what it gives artists is this chance to tell their own story. And you're right. One of the things I think was a great thing for managers with bands is when, as soon as kids could start posting, not just at the end of the set, song by song, what they thought was going on.
In real time.
I know it changed Incubus's attitude, who used to play a very tight set over a whole tour. They might do 28 songs and flip a couple in and out. As soon as social media really kicked in, and they figured out that if people were finding out on night 1 and night 2 that their favorite songs weren't being played, they stopped showing up on night 4 and 5. And so for all you artists that are out there watching that think that social media is a wank, just understand that that's your pipeline to your customer, and they're going to talk about what's going on with or without you. So if you can lead the story, A, by starting and doing a great set, that would be great. But I think it's important for people to use those tools. And I know when I was out at Coachella, Christ, man, it was tough to get an email through because everybody was using those cell phones. It was like nothing I'd ever seen. But
if people
boy, there was activity.
Phones, it'd be okay. If they just use cell phones, it'd be okay. But they all want to upload a movie from the day, you know, like a whole band set. It's like that just makes the broad, you know, it just makes it hard.
Is that something you guys are working on, trying to get more bandwidth out there? Because it's, I remember trying to meet Cody the first time. I said, okay, I'll meet you at this tent, right? And the email didn't, or the message didn't show up for 45 minutes, and I went to another one. It was like, you know, like Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles trying to find each other at a party. Go, Ray, I hear you. Hey, where are you? You know. So anyway, that's not a knock here. Okay, I'm not going to use my cell phone.
That is how I got my first internship with you, though.
That's true. You know, he finally found me. I thought this kid's actually
There's a secret to that. It took me, you know, a decade to learn. Don't say meet me in 10 minutes. Say meet me at 7:15.
There you go.
It's the only thing that works because that 10-minute thing, by the time the delay gets you every time. Yeah.
You had another question in the chat room there, Code?
Yeah, I got a bunch of questions. This one's relevant. It's from our...
This one's relevant. Thanks, Code. That's what you're there for. Jeez.
Well,
he's not just some dumb jock, I'll tell you.
First 40 minutes was not that relevant.
My bad. Let's see. What is the primary matrix Goldenvoice uses to evaluate putting smaller opening bands on bills? He says, obviously everything is a mix, but what do you keep your eye on most, like YouTube views, commercial radio, etc.? And this comes from our boy Andrew Jones.
Do you actually use a matrix?
Yeah. It's called Donna's Opinion. So we haven't talked about this. So we have a series of venues, and this has taken 30 years to put together. So we just picked up the Roxy Theater in LA, so 500 capacity. Next one up is El Rey, 700. Next one up is 12 or 1300 with the Henry Fonda. You know, we have Club Nokia, 27. We have Fox Theater out in Pomona, 2000. We got, I have a Glass House in Pomona, 800. Nokia Theater, 7,000. Shrine, 3,500 or 6,000. You know, then Staples Center, then Coachella. So all along the way, there's ways for us to watch bands. But more specifically, El Rey Theater and Henry Fonda. Donna books both, and Donna Bush. And what's great about those places is it's pretty much all up and coming, relevant bands. We're not really booking, you know, the cover bands and this, that, and the other thing. So like when I look at those counts every morning in the Glass House too, you know, it's like I look at the small ones and say, oh wow, Bastille, what happened here? And Donna's crazy. She'll fly to every country to see every festival, every trade thing, and she comes back. We joke a lot of times she sees the bands before the agent of that band is seeing the band. And just stay in touch with her and the rest of the buyers, you know. And so we have, you know, these different buyers that I stay in touch, you know, and just talk all day long with. And it's almost like I never have to research. You're just living it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting for all the young managers and bands out there. You said something that's kind of been lost over the years. There was a decided stepping stone for bands that took the steps up and earned their way into big headline status. And I can see over the last few years there have been bands that have had a lot of success on maybe one album, and they start to skip those steps. And I think what happens is that if you skip those steps and you don't have a hit record, you fall right back down to square one. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, in the older days it was these radio bands that would get a lot of airplay and just assume they're going to be around forever. The airplay stops, they go away. I think it's with, you know, festivals are pretty popular, of course, right now. So when a band comes on, they're really popular, they just, you know, headline a festival or up 2 or 3 at the top, and they don't hit the whole country with the clubs and the theaters and get a real base of their own. I love festivals. I don't think a band should only play festivals. It's like, it's a, you know, piece of the puzzle, one thing on the Pokemon belt, but it's not the whole puzzle. You know? It's like, it's a piece. And corner piece, but it's not enough to just go and hit festivals and think you hit the whole country.
That's kind of like the express elevator versus building it brick by brick. And you know, folks, if you look out there, the bands that have been around for 30 and 40 years actually hit all those steps along the way. And when I think of bands, you know, not to pick on Panic at the Disco, had a big hit, then was playing Long Beach Arena, didn't have a big hit, and then were kind of, nobody cared anymore. And I sat there and thought, I don't know whether that's bad management, whatever it was. It's just they didn't take the time to hit those steps and be patient. It's almost like bands act like they think they're only going to be around for a year, so we better get it while we can. I think of Loverboy was one that came to mind back when I was in the day. Yeah, so, you know, they were up and out in one day. Let me ask you a question. This is, I started in the business as a promoter, and I remember that first Lollapalooza show when it was 7 or 8 bands, and I was thinking, wow, what the fuck are they going to do with all these bands? And now you've got 150. I talked with Ashley Capp yesterday. Got 150 bands, and as a guy who used to book shows, I'm sitting there every year you do this going, how the hell do you decide on 150 bands, multiple locations? How does that work? Does it start with budget? Does it start with, we just want to have these? How does that work, Paul Tollett?
It's kind of by, you know, I guess you could say, you know, buckets of types of music. And we don't really have a quota, like we need 7 this types of DJs, 8 indie. Like, we don't do it that way. It just, when we're gathering, I like, you know, not every year I do it, but I used to go visit every agent in person. And as of 2 years ago, you know, and so that means like Seattle, you know, it means Chapel Hill in North Carolina. Like, go on a little trip of 3 or 4 3-day trips and hit all the agents in person and hear their pitch, you know, and remind them that, look, I respect you. If I don't book your band, it's not you. It just, the band's not making the cut because there's 150 others. So tell your manager that it's not your fault. You know, and so
which they never believe. But
they never believe, but
yeah.
It's like, I like to do that because I like to hear it over the phone and emails. It's just so hard. It's like in person, you can hear, and then some of the agents fly in. When being in LA, a lot of people come to LA, so that helps so much. And if we first gather Stacy V, who I work with, she does basically a master list. For, you know, we put it all the submissions that come in, I send to her, and she puts on the grid. We look through it, you know, hit all the YouTubes, you know, talk about them. Gather all, you know, the staff in and say, you know, what do you think of this? And people, oh, you got to get, you know, you got to get Blood Orange. You know, it's like, okay, I hear like 6 people say Blood Orange in my office, and I hear the music. Like, I'm not going to question it. It's like, it was not on my first list. I just, you know, I knew Lightspeed Champion, who was in before. I didn't know Blood Orange. And but you hear all these people say it. It's a natural. And for me, it's like, it's the culture that you kind of put around yourself that it kind of automatically books itself. I mean, manifested through me maybe, but it's like, it just kind of, you know, getting there.
Let me ask you this. One of the things, again, that was striking for me over the last few years is that when I went to Coachella, I was surprised to see how many people there that were 40 years and old up. I wasn't the oldest guy there. And I remember sitting out there watching the Violent Femmes, who'd packed on a few pounds and lost a little hair, but they still were entertaining as hell. And
So have I, so I feel for them.
yeah, me too. But I guess my question is that, was that a conscious decision on your part to kind of widen the demographic of it and make it not just a kids thing? Because it's a show that you can go with your kids. I went with my 2 sons, who dropped me like a brick at the front door as soon as they were in. So that was a lot of fun, being the oldest guy watching an EDM thing in the tent. I thought, Jesus Christ, I felt like a voyeur in the whole thing. But is that a conscious decision on your part?
We never talk demographics around the office. We just talk kind of, you know, bands. And, you know, with Violent Femmes, I had seen them before anything, you know, at school. Cal Poly Pomona, walked out. I saw their name, you know, A Kid with Hormones. I saw the band named Violent Femmes. Like, I got to check it out, you know? Sure. And they're 3 dudes, and they were just the greatest band I ever saw. So I got to be friends with them, you know, Frank Riley later, you know, was the booker, you know, was the agent. And we called for them. I've always been wanting them, and they weren't together. And we put that one back together. Actually, it doesn't sound like that was gone, but it was actually gone. They weren't talking to each other, the 3 of them. And I just wanted them to have their moment at Coachella, you know,
That's a great story.
Yeah, every band should have their kind of fun moment there.
I think it's interesting that Coachella has that kind of gravitas that it could get bands beyond the kind of pettiness and stupid things that ultimately, drive band members apart. That Coachella is so cool that they could actually put all that shit away for a day and say, if we're going to play one gig, let's go play Coachella. I can think of a few bands that could probably use that, but at any rate. Let me ask you another question. You got anything in the chat room, Code?
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay. I can feel you over there.
Yeah, I have a question from Avenger Stuff. He says, how, especially in the early days, have you been able to get amazing bands and still stay within budget?
Yeah. So
some years better than others, Paul?
Yeah, I have a 50-50 partner. AEG is my partner on it. And I have a definitive talent budget. I tell them in advance, and I got to stick to it.
Tom Miserandino sets that
yeah. Sure. Well, what it is basically, just to give a little detail, it's like whatever it was last year, is a good starting point. If I want more, I got to go, talk to everybody. So, I go over sometimes. And I don't want to violate my contract by saying I do, but I think that if there's someone great, I'm going to go over, and I got to deal with it, And I don't want to though, I want to stay on budget, and I'll only go over if it's something like, Dr. Dre pops up with Snoop Dogg. It's like we're going to break the bank because I already had, Black Keys and I had Radiohead. We kind of didn't even need a third big one. But you have a chance for history, you're going to go over budget. Like, why wouldn't you?
I like the way you said, I went over budget a couple times with Miserandino, and it didn't go down quite as easy as that, If you're out there, Tom, I apologize, God,
he's doing great. He's running Europe for
I hear
AEG.
he took up golf, so maybe we got a chance.
Yeah,
that's what I heard.
He's doing great over there.
Good. I want to talk about something else. A couple things as a guy in the business two things that I watched happen over the years as you evolved the whole thing. When you started off, it was individual ticket for each night, right? And which I thought always makes it easy because you can have a great Friday night, Saturday night, and give it all back on Sunday. And I've done that a number of times in my career. When you went to the one ticket price for the whole weekend, I thought that was a freaking stroke of genius, to be honest. What got you to that place?
It hit us. So in 2009, we did Paul McCartney, and his day he did huge, and the other days, not so huge, just because he's McCartney. And when I got back to LA, and we broke even that year, pretty much, and got back to LA, everyone I talked to went to Coachella. I'm like, how can that be? If we only did 45,000 paid, how come every single person went? And then I realized we did about 80,000 different bodies through the door, but only got paid on an average of 45,000. So I'm like, okay, whatever, you got to live with that. But then I realized, and all of us talked about it, was the reason it was hard for some people to go to Coachella is they couldn't find a hotel room. What happens is people go out to Coachella for the weekend, and there's a 3-day minimum on the hotels. So you grab the hotel for the whole weekend. You only go to one show. You go to one night. Then there's the second person wants to go to all 3 days, can't find a hotel room. So we're like, that's the solution.
Boom, light goes on.
You got to give the people who want a 3-day pass access first. So we had a plan. We were going to say, we sell the 3-day first, and then if there's any left over, single day. As soon as we went to the 3-day pass, all of it sold out. Yeah. It was always like from that moment on, it sold out instantly.
Yeah, I remember hearing that, and I just thought, wow, that is just genius, having been a promoter, knowing that you have all that money in the bank and it takes a lot of the heat off and allows you to kind of maybe look at the whole weekend as opposed to looking night by night going, geez, we're a little light on Saturday.
It's kind of that took us 10 years to even think about that. That's crazy. But for us, the poster's the whole show. It's not just like this right here, it's like we want the whole thing. So if I don't want someone to look at the thing and say, oh, Saturday's a little weak. It's like the weekend is epic. Like I don't care who's on at 7:30 Saturday, but it's like the whole thing is great. You know?
I thought it was great. The other one, which you just did recently, which again, this one I wasn't so sure was genius, but you're here making money, I'm not. So was when you went to the second weekend, because having booked bands my whole life, I'm thinking, okay, I like the idea of it, but I thought for sure there's no way you'd get bands to actually book 2 weekends in a row and commit to being in town. And I'm thinking, what are they going to do in between? Talk about how you got that one, because that one seemed to work out pretty well too.
So what happened was that so many people wanted to go to that show. We were running into people, a couple of people actually crying they couldn't go to the show because they'd been like 7 years in a row, can't get the 8th, you know, and got super sad. Tickets were going for, you know, double, $600–700, you know. So we thought about doing a second weekend, kind of like Jazz Fest, where it's different bands. But we thought 2 things: we'll run out of bands, but the other bigger thing is if you're a kid who's going to the show and you go to the first weekend, but there's a better set the second weekend, you can't go to both. You don't have the finances, you don't have the time. And it's kind of unfair to like tempt everybody, you know, you've got the great bands are on this weekend, but you're stuck with. So we're like, okay, same bands. What about doing the same lineup? And the same thing you thought, like, well, not 150 of them. There's just no way. You know, just maybe do the headliners. And then I thought, like, the problem with Coachella is there's bands playing at 2 or 3 o'clock that kind of make the weekend sometimes. You know, so it's like you've got to, you know, we've had the Killers be the first band in a tent and have a smoking show, you know, and, you know, throughout the years there's been, you know, tent bands like that. And that's a burn. Like, you go and it's like you didn't get that moment, you know, so we decided we're going to go for everything. So we called all the bands and said, you know, what's better than Coachella? 2 Coachellas, you know? And,
it sounds so great now, but yeah.
It sounds simple, you know? So, you know, we've had to, over the last couple of years, try to figure out how to keep the bands busy. At first, we told the agents, let us buy the band for the week, we'll take care of it. We'll give you one number, you won't have to deal with it. Agents were a little possessive of like, I want to be able to control my band's destiny. Like, okay, have at it. Got a little hard because there's 150 bands looking for shows. So we've had to kind of all work together to make sure, you know, everybody gets some things.
See you just recently announced a whole slew of kind of in-betweeners, shall we call them?
In-betweeners of like smaller places for bigger bands and to keep them busy. You know, like we don't want them to be, you know, I'll be honest, like we don't put them in too epic of settings. You know, just more wants to be fun, go play a small show. We don't want it to be like your killer LA show taking the shine away from the big festival, but you know.
Unbelievable. I got to say, kudos to you for making that one happen. It's tough to get 2 or 3 bands on the same page. 150 is like almost hard to believe. We're running out of time here. I guess we got to be out of here at 12:15. So I want to ask you one other question. I have to ask you while we're here in Nashville, because again, this is another one. I just sat there and thought, God, either Tollett's losing his mind or he's the smartest guy in the world. You know, I'm imagining that when you announced Stagecoach, I'm thinking, Jesus, God, I wish I was there when Paul Tollett, alt-rock punk promoter now Coachella, comes to Nashville and says, hey, I want to put on a country festival, and we'll call it Stagecoach. Talk about that one.
Okay, so I wanted to do a second weekend at that point of country.
Now you got 3, but you're working on 2.
Yeah, we were working on 2 at that point. So didn't know a lot about country, you know, besides Hee Haw when I was a kid. So what I did is bought the Hee Haw set again. Watched every DVD in a row.
For real?
Yeah, for sure. 90 days was awesome. It was awesome. It was it was great. Then took 90 days off of rock songs and only listened to Sirius Radio with all the 5 stations. You know, all the Willie's Roadhouse, Outlaw Country, all the Prime, all that stuff, right? And then there's a book called A to Z Encyclopedia of Country. Read it. And called Louis Messina and said, okay, I'm ready, you know, to go down. We're going to do a thing called Country Coachella. That was going to originally be the name. And Steve Moore, who later turned out to be the head of the CMA, called both of those and said, because they were both AG guys, and they brought me down to William Morris and CAA and all the agencies down here and said, listen to this guy, you know, he's got a plan to do a country version of Coachella, and a lot of them already knew us because throughout the years they got rock bands and whatever. And the agencies down here were awesome. Like from day one, they're like, we're fully in, here's the roster, tell us what you need, here's the prices. Like, I love the way the country does it. It's just so straightforward. You want a band, it's 300 grand. And here's who they'll open for. You know, with Coachella, I'm always fighting over the poster and the slot change and everything, you know, the slot. And country is just so straightforward, so mellow, no drama, and just it's beautiful. And it's been fun. You know, that one started out slow too. You know, we did 11,000 per day, I think, the first year, and we're at 59,000 per day, 3 days this year. Wow! And it just in California, would never thought. No. You know.
Again, it turns out to be genius. By the way, this is my first trip to Nashville, and I'll just say that, you know, for anybody that lives in Nashville, what a great town here. Everybody's got a great attitude. Everything's easy. It was easy driving from the airport. So when I fly out here tonight, I might be thinking about coming back one day. I thought, geez, a lot of nice golf courses and a lot of nice people here. Before we leave, I wanted to take some questions from the audience. Folks in the audience have questions here? Okay, we'll take, you got a microphone for that gentleman?
Come on over here.
Yeah, okay, well, yeah, there you go. We'll put you on the spot here. Because we want to get you guys involved in the act, because I guess we actually have, usually when I do my show, we just go, fuck it, it's the internet. We end when we end, but I think we'll be evicted from the building here shortly. Your name first?
My name is Ben. I'm a student in Philadelphia.
All right, Ben.
From my university.
Perfect.
Oh, cool.
So my question is, you kind of mentioned it, how do you work with the agents and who makes the overall decision of who plays before who when you're dealing with 150 bands, and how does that kind of play out?
It's an ongoing negotiation with all the bands of who opens for who. Every time it's different. It's the one thing all year I don't want to do. Everything else I want to attack as it comes, but that's one thing. It's not productive for anybody. It doesn't, no one, even if you win and you get the better slot, it just doesn't make anyone feel good, you know?
Yeah, I've been on the manager side of that, and it's horrible because people, they let the little things get in the way of the big picture. Yeah. And that's where a lot of time is wasted in the music business, with people focusing on the tiniest things when the big picture is rosy, but that's all they can see is the one little dot.
It's hard, you know, we feel, and it's been proven at that festival, and a lot of festivals, early in the day is fine, you know, and sometimes you tell a band, you know, you're going to play at 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock or whatever, and they think it's like the worst thing ever. What they don't realize is you're not against the headliners. It's actually kind of a headliner slot for a small band. You know, that 10 o'clock slot at night might be hard, you know, against Radiohead, you know, so it's like, but you got to work with the agents and just talk it out, and if you have a good enough relationship with the agents over the years, they'll kind of trust that you're doing your best. You know, you might not get what they want, but they know what you're going through, and, you know, try not to penalize a band if you can.
Plus, I think you got something on your side, which is you take one crazy band to say, okay, we get invited to Coachella, we're not going to play, you know, so anyway, okay, any other questions out there? Well, you guys are a pretty quiet bunch here. Okay.
Ren, real quick though.
Okay.
I got a text from my dad with a question.
Nice.
All right, well, let's take care of Dad. He lives out there in Palm Springs. Maybe he's looking for that parking pass.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Turn it down.
He says, ask Paul about all the great things Goldenvoice is doing for the Valley, the block party for the young artists, and other things that you guys have going on.
So Palm Springs came to us, the city, and said, during the week, can you put a little something together for us, a little street party, you know, street show? And like, yeah, it sounds fun. We love Palm Springs. The whole valley is great. There's like 7 or 8 cities. We love them all, and Palm Springs has a lot of hotels, a lot of stuff going on there. So we put together a little festival for them, like 4-band, 3-band bill, free. And it's like it's kind of cool up against the mountains, and we've been concentrating on some health things for, you know, the East Valley. It's pretty poor out there. So we've been running a clinic for free medical and dental, and so I was driving on the street, I saw a USC mobile medical truck, or mobile dental truck. At first I thought, oh, that'd be fun at Coachella, like free dental, you know? And so I'm telling Jim Garino, I go, yeah, I'm gonna bring this thing, you know, get your molar out of Coachella. And he goes, yeah, that's stupid, like people will, you know, have impacted too, that it's not right, you know, at the show, and they'll take the drugs. It's like, don't do it.
I hadn't thought about that. That's
and so he says, but I do have a friend, Jerry Moss, that kind of did that before, and he did medical and mobile dental, you should call them, you know, and then check in this thing called RAM of California, remote area medical. So long story short, we got a medical truck, dental, and a vision truck, and they go into the fairgrounds the week before. And we didn't do it with the Coachella people, but we did it with the community, and said 3 days of free health care.
Nice.
And it's only because the festival is now so successful that we can even think about stuff like this. And it's been great, like to see, you know, people come and have 5 teeth that are black and get them, you know, pulled out and get all that, you know, stuff out of their body, and little kids eyeglasses for the first time. It's like super incredible. And it's like these festivals, not just Coachella, all across the country, I think they're going to do a lot of good also.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it has been doing a lot of good out there, and it's just fun to hear. I've been doing this show for a while now, and it's fun to hear all people I've known in the business for a long time. I find out something new every day, and you are one of the class acts in the business, Mr. Tollett. You've come a long way from your beaver cleaver days here, but you still have the hat. I say maybe the same one.
Same one.
All right, I want to before we go today, I want to talk about, for our folks that are watching our show regularly. Next week, I started this idea last year. This whole idea about helping people and mentoring has really become a passion for me, and I think I feel some responsibility to share some of the experience I've had in the hopes that we can keep a healthy music business going. So lots of kids are not in places where they can go to big universities or have the money to do that. So I started this wacky little thing called Renman U, which is a crazy idea I had, where I was going to teach a 12-week course on my take on the music business, my little insider's take. It's called Renman U. So if you're watching, folks, next Wednesday we're going to be talking about managers, which I know something about. My buddy Doc McGee's going to be in town, so maybe he'll make a guest appearance. That's at 5 p.m. next Wednesday. Before we leave, I just want to thank you, Paul, for taking the time to come in here and share your thoughts and experience, because you know you've got a great story of success in this business, and you're giving back, and I want to just say thank you. I want to thank all you folks here for joining us here today, and I'll thank all the folks at Polestar for inviting me here today and letting me have a little fun and doing a little bit different kind of panel here today. So for all you folks out there watching, we want you to keep dreaming about doing something big. I'll encourage you to go out there and do it. Keep showing up, keep learning, and make something great happen in your life. And if we've helped you in any way today, that's great. My name's Steve Rennie. This is Renman Live. We'll see you Wednesday. That was good, man. That was solid. All right. That was pretty cool.